Hey everybody, welcome back. Anthony Russell, banners on the wall. And as the Northern Hemisphere season creeps ever towards its conclusion, Stanley Cup playoffs are on the horizon. National Division playoffs in Britain kick off this coming weekend. The Elite League playoffs are only a couple of weeks away. What better to talk about than people who are waiting for their season to begin? Long-time watchers and listeners and everything else to BOTW know, if there's one thing I love during the summer months up here, it is Australian ice hockey. And what better thing to do than to finally get some more Australians on some BOTW bits so that we can talk about the upcoming AIHL season, give you guys a bit of a primer as to what's going on. And I can't think of two people better to talk about it than the hosts of Hockey Night in Australia. So from Oz Hockey Media, I'm joined by Courtney and Sean O'Connor. Good evening, as you are 11 hours ahead of me, I believe.
Yeah, something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
It's 8:30 at night for you guys as we're talking, and it's 9:30 in the morning for me because the wonders of technology. Just to prove the point about how ridiculously large Australia is, Courtney, you're in the Hunter Valley somewhere, aren't you? Near Newcastle, and you're in Canberra, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Awesome. Like all Europeans, my geography of anything has been determined by sports. I suppose the one thing, we'll kick off with a really, really obvious question. Tell us, between the two of you, what is Oz Hockey Media? What does it do? What's the focus for you guys?
Look, for me, I take care of the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League. So a lot of the graphics, the socials, the just general communication of how the season's going, updates on players, updates on games, and keeping everyone in the loop with where to watch, what to see. It's really, for me, it's just about getting more awareness of hockey in Australia, because even now, I've been involved for 11 years, I still find people that go, oh, we have ice hockey in Australia, or it's, we have a rink in Newcastle. It's only been around for 25 years. So
and Newcastle's only the most successful team in Australian history there in hockey. So,
Yes, with 6 Goodall Cups, we are the leading team. But yeah, just for me, it's just about getting that awareness out and doing what I'm good at, which is social media, to try and bring more fans to the fan base.
Yeah. So obviously, I sort of delve in AIHL a lot more, and we both do a lot of stuff for the national teams, and we'll occasionally do quite a bit of coverage on national tournaments, state tournaments, and state leagues, depending on what's there. Really, as Courtney said, we're kind of here to try and promote hockey in Australia and to, tell the stories that are coming out of this country in this sport, because there's great people and great stories to be told and not a lot of media attention.
Do need to, of course, just touch on something that Courtney just mentioned, because the AIHL season has just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, and finally, the West was best, as the Perth Inferno have finally claimed the AIHL. And Courtney with the Wheel of Fortune assistant hands in the background there, with the Inferno jersey in the background. But it was a really, really impressive AIHL season. The Melbourne Ducks finally allowed to join as a proper member. No idea why they didn't just join, but in
Australia, it's never that easy.
No, apparently not. It's never straight. It is never straight.
There's always at least a year, if not more, of just exhibition games before a team's allowed to join.
Or the Melbourne Mustangs only being allowed to be called Mustangs for that year, not being allowed to be called Melbourne, because fine. But no, Courtney, it's been a really, really successful year. A lot of good stuff coming out of the AIHL, and a really, really great finals weekend at the Melbourne Ice House to finish everything off a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the Ducks coming in, I think, is so important, because it's another team which is creating more space for the women in Australia to move into. It's creating a really solid pathway, particularly for more of the Victorian women to have a spot in the league, which I think is really important. And in America, the PWHL really emphasizes that point as well, with just creating strong pathways so that the young girls getting started can go, hey, I want to be like that, and they have that drive. And just watching them develop over the season, it wasn't the easiest season for a brand new team, but every game they got better and better. And look, as you said, finals weekend was phenomenal. The way the team stepped up and played hard, and we had Brisbane Lightning and Perth Inferno in the final, which was a first in the many years that I've been watching it. And of course, the Joe McEwen Cup not going to a Sydney or a Melbourne team was also a big thing. So I don't know. There was just so much that happened. I don't think I can focus on any one point, but it's been an exciting year. So if you do have any fans of Banners on the Wall that are interested in looking, there is a YouTube channel. They can go and have a look in their spare time while they're waiting for their hockey. It's AIHL.tv. And I'm really proud of our women. They work hard, they play hard, and the games are great. So I love it.
I'm firmly so happy that the Inferno won as well.
Oh, me too.
I've been in their camp the last 2 years. I thought, yes, this is their time. They finally got it done.
I spoke to, I won't specify who, but I spoke to a member of the Inferno community who have said Perth in both men's and women's leagues tend to choke a bit in the finals, and they don't have the best time in finals. And we did see that last year for Inferno. And so for them to turn around this year, they just blitzed it. Like, they came together well. They had a disruption of a coaching change, and JFK took up the mantle and just did an excellent job for the second half of the year. Look, credit to the coach for the start of the year. He obviously got them started and got that ball rolling and got that momentum. But the girls did the work, and they got the job done finally. So it's nice to break the Western curse.
We should just specify, when Courtney says JFK, there genuinely is in Australian hockey a gentleman called John F. Kennedy Jr. It's no relation at all. No relation to anybody, and no bizarre health claims here, apart from whatever the West Australian water does to people. You mentioned there about the curse of the West, because the Perth Thunder have been lurking around in the AIHL for quite some time now. One of the newer organisations, and then obviously Central Coast came back, which was really, really surreal. I still want the Blue Coast, the Gold Coast Blue Tongues back in the league at some point. But the big news in terms of the AIHL this season is, after a year out, all the rink redevelopment bits and pieces at Macquarie, Sydney returns in the form of the Ice Dogs and the Bears to the AIHL. Last season, guys on both rosters were kind of loaned out, farmed out, took their talents anywhere they could, including a few who went over to New Zealand. With these two teams back in the league for this upcoming season, we're seeing a few bits of movement, including a few guys not returning to their respective Sydney clubs as well. What does it mean to have, firstly, to have Macquarie back open, because obviously it's, now a new refurbished facility. It's a really, really big thing to have. God bless the Liverpool Catholic Club, but it can only do so much. But having the two Sydney teams back in the AIHL, it's a big thing for this league to be back up to 10 teams this year.
100%. Like, it's so important for the league to get back up to 10. It was a big shock last season to lose both those Sydney teams. So yeah, to have them both back, it will be amazing. And as you say, there's been a lot of movements. You've got a lot of players returning. We saw Ryan Andersley was announced today by the Bears, for instance, is coming back. But then yesterday we had Brody Lindell confirmed to be staying in Melbourne, staying with the Mustangs, not returning to the Bears. So and then you had Canberra sign Crowder and Todd. So there's been quite a few movements. It's be interesting. Again, I think it's good. There'll be a lot of youngsters that will get a lot more opportunities. That was one thing that we all noticed last year, was that because a lot of those rosters had additional players from those Sydney clubs come in, there wasn't as many opportunities for youngsters to get ice time. So this should give more Australian youngsters ice time. And that's only a good thing for our national teams.
I'm personally really interested to see what happens to Central Coast this year. New out of the AIHL for many, many years, where did sort of exist in a different form in other leagues at times, came back to the AIHL, and they have struggled towards the bottom end of the table now for a little bit, getting more competitive year on year. For me, I'm really interested to see what they do with both Sydney sides back in. Can the Rhinos be competitive this season, irrespective of whether Anand Oberoi is back in net or not, because a man can only save 60 shots a game so many times in the season?
Yeah, look, I think that they've got a really strong leadership base, particularly when, led from the front with Rob Malloy and Tyler Kubara's returning. I think when you've got two players that have such strong character and the way that they can take care of that team, it'll keep them going. So, being bottom, losing games, that can take its toll mentally. So I think having leaders like that is the first step that's going to definitely help the team. But again, they're a team that I think got better. So like I sort of said about the Ducks and the AW, every season, the start might be a bit rough, which kind of happens across the board for all of the teams, but they get better as games go on, as experience builds up, as they get used to their systems and their line mates. And I think every year we'll just keep seeing them get better. And we've seen that with the Ice Dogs as well. Over time, they were also one of the teams that sort of floated around that bottom to mid-range. And yeah, I think just being able to compete against all 9 of the other teams is what will keep each of them getting better. When you've got such a broad spectrum of competition, I think, they may not have, being top of the table might not be in the cards for the Rhinos in the next couple of years, but it's certainly not off the cards that they start to climb and get to about that sort of mid-range, even top 6 to try and make finals. So it's I think every team that's experienced it knows it takes time to build. You build the culture, you build your systems, you build your lines, and good things come.
They strike me as an organization that really is needing to put everything in perspective and play the long-term game, whereas you've got some other sides that are a bit more established or have a bit more sort of financial backing behind them. And it's not to poke too much fun at the Melbourne Ice, but when you're able to have a multinational construction company sponsor a corner of the building, you do imagine that the money is there to be able to allow them to do some bits and pieces. We do need to touch on the fact though, because of course it was a massive piece of news for Australian ice hockey last year, and for folk who can see Sean and his background, the new arena in Canberra, the golden days of yore, and the Phillips Ice Skating and Swimming Centre now behind the Canberra Rape. And for British folk who never watched the AIHL back in the days, there are so many rinks, Sean, in Great Britain that they look at Phillips and they think, that looks like where I go and watch ice hockey on a weekly basis. It reminds people of Peterborough, of Gosport, of Grimsby, of places like that. But a huge development for the AIHL in general to have not just a big new shiny rink, but a North American style bowl arena in the AIHL. Canberra couldn't get it over the line at the end of the season, but huge, not just for hockey in the ACT. Insert jokes about the local council building another rink in Canberra here, because I know that's a bit bone of contention. But that new arena in Canberra has been massive for the Brave as an organisation.
100%. Like, it was such a big financial gamble because the AIS is such an expensive venue to rent, and the Australian government owns the venue. So it was a big risk, but without any risk, you're not going to get rewarded, and the reward was there. I think everyone knew that there was a lot of demand for hockey, and hockey had only been increasing, and the Brave had already reached the maximum, if not more, than what they had at Phillip. Like, Phillip was really holding the team back in a way. As much as, as you're right, there was nothing like the atmosphere in Phillip, and everyone basically being on top of the players in that tiny little rink that everyone knows those suburban kind of rinks. And but this is
netting
a totally different
netting as well in 2024 with netting, and there's still a couple of rinks like that here in Britain, and it's just this new big shiny facility. They'll have to forgive me because I can't remember the names of the chaps who commentate for Canberra, but that first game, you could just hear the excitement in every note of every word that came out of their mouths about how big a thing this was for everybody.
Yeah, Grizz, like, he absolutely, he's such a good commentator for Canberra, and everyone was so excited, and I was really nervous. Like, I didn't know how it would go down, and then I also didn't know if Canberra was going to need time to build into such a big venue. Like, you know, to go from around 1,000, if not less than 1,000 people per game to a 3,000 seat stadium is a big jump in one go. But yeah, they just kept packing it out all the time.
I think you got
quite amazing.
I think you got a bit sick of me, Sean, the amount of times I would say on a hockey night in Australia, build it and they will come. It is proof in the pudding that you create the space. There are enough fans out there that will fill it. And I think I lost track of how many times I said that every time we talked about AIS.
And now you've got other cities which are exploring possibilities of putting in temporary rinks into these indoor arenas that we have, which are predominantly there for concerts and basketball. And now they're considering ice hockey during the winter.
I think as well, people don't quite realise that basketball's quite a popular sport in Australia as well, and these companies that have these facilities will be looking for, I don't want to say sort of secondary uses, because we're both ice hockey, we're all ice hockey folks, and ice hockey websites and stuff like that that comes first. But the idea as well, you know, particularly where the cost of doing business is rising at the moment, and we'll talk about what problems that's causing for hockey for you guys down there in a bit. But the idea as well that, like you say, that actually there is a demand to have the live experience. Like I get the joy of watching the AIHL and the AWIHL through my laptop screen. I will make it one day, I swear. But actually, people work hard, and at the end of the week, there is nothing better than live ice hockey. The sound of skates cutting across the ice, the sights, the sounds, and the smells, and actually better facilities will help in all facets. You'd assume.
And I must admit, like, I actually struggle to watch the NHL, for instance, because it's not that live experience. You know, and it's amazing hockey live. This is why, like, no matter where you are in the world, if you've got hockey, you should just go to your local teams, go watch it. It's so much fun. And I'll always bang on about that. But it's something else. And I'm really hoping that we've seen 3 teams now break their records for their memberships this year, and 1 team sell out. So hockey crowds for the AIHL are just going next level here.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Sean. I work with the North Stars and help with ticketing there too, and we've had the same thing. We just haven't done our social media about it yet, in that we've hit a record number of season ticket holders. We have a limited number of single game tickets that will be available. So it's the fans are showing up, and they're showing up in force, and they're making sure that they don't miss out by getting in. Like, so many people were emailing us, like, before the season was even over, wanting to organize tickets for this season. So we had to just put them all in a list and go, I've got your information. I'll let you know when we have more details. So, we were getting people already missing out in 2025. We're jumping at wanting tickets quickly. So
is this going to cause some real issues though for the AIHL going forward? And I think about the fact that ice hockey, and it was Michael at Thought Fox Media who said to me a few years ago, ice hockey is an emerging sport, and I really love that word usage, rather than calling it a minority sport, which is what it gets called a lot here. But within the Australian sporting landscape, you've got Australian rules football, because AFL is not Aussie rules; it is Aussie rules. I've seen that enough online from people that the AFL is not all of Australian rules football. But you've got Aussie rules. You've got the NRL. You've got the A League. And of course, the fact that women's sports is probably in a position in Australia compared to Britain is probably held in a much higher, slightly higher bit of the public consciousness. And then the AIHL's got to kind of fit into that point. But also as well, you've got this swell of people wanting to experience it. And it kind of feels like potentially for Australian ice hockey that, the kid's getting a bit too big for his school jumper at this point. But there's nowhere to go. And the bubble potentially what happens if the bubble bursts? Because you can only have so many fans in the building, but also that it's with so many other really, really big sports in Australia. Where is the growth? And how does that look for you guys in Australian ice hockey at the moment? Because we bang on here about the fact, the former head of IHUK here, Henry Stadens, talked about the fact that ice hockey is the most popular indoor sport in Great Britain, 5th most attended live sport in the country. And we sit behind football and rugby and cricket and all of those bits and pieces. So we're having that conversation now as our multiple governing bodies are starting to merge together of where we go. But where do you guys go right now?
I'll jump in first. I think with such limited funding, because it is, semi-professional in that a lot of our players go to work on Monday, with lack of facilities, really we've got to lean into the live stream. And I know we just talked about how it's not quite the same as being there physically live, but the more people you can get watching AIHL.tv, I think the more are going to try and get their tickets sooner. And it's for me, I think it's the turnover of those single games. So people can come to certain dates. So out of 15 home games, they might come to 6 or 7, and it's turning over in those other games. Someone else is in their spot technically with taking that ticket, and it's getting that turnover of people knowing to get in, and they might only get to come to a handful of home games, but have them at home watching on AIHL TV, because that is the limited sort of space to get people actually watching it. And hopefully, it creates funding. Hopefully that creates more sponsorship. It might get like the more traffic you have on a stream, or you become a bit more appealing to sponsors because you can run an ad, and it all kind of has to feed back into money. Really, it's having the ability to do what Canberra did, and that's go, okay, we've outgrown this building, we're now going to find a way to make a bigger building work, and then the fans have stepped up and they're selling it out week in and week out. So,
although in the end, I do think it was an easier decision for the Brave than it would otherwise been for a lot of other teams, in the fact that the Brave lost money every home game when they were at Phillip. They never made money. So in order to start making money from game days, they had to find a bigger venue.
Yeah.
And they've now done that. But yeah, so I do agree with what Courtney said. I will say this as well. I think that, professionalism, facilities, pathways, and governance, they're all the key pillars that Australia needs to improve on when it comes to ice hockey in order to really maximize the sport's potential. I think I imagine it's the same in the UK. There's a lot of facility issues. There's not a lot of ice time around, so access for kids to be able to get into the sport young can be quite limited. And that means that you've got to then try and bring people in as supporters when they're older, as opposed to growing up with it. I mean, that's the great thing about all the outside sports, whether it's AFL, NRL, rugby union, whatever, and soccer, it's all so easy for them because anyone can easily access those sports.
And you don't have issues of electricity and like keeping the ice cold, like you're out on the grass. And the kids that are Canadian and American, their winters they can freeze a pond in their backyard. Like for Aussies, it's warm outside, so that's where the soccers and the crickets and the tennises, that's more dominant sport. So
you look at Newcastle, there's a city of what, 500,000 people almost now, if you look at the greater catchment, and they have one rink.
Yep.
Do you potentially then, because I know, because Ice Hockey UK have signed up to do a lot of the NHL street bits and pieces. They've got a first event coming up in the not too distant future up in Glasgow. Is street hockey and ball hockey potentially the way to then supplement that pathway of kids coming into it? Because for all whilst obviously you can't play it on grass, there's enough spare bits of land somewhere where you could stick on you could run around on your feet with a hockey stick and a ball. Does Australia and ice hockey then potentially have to think a bit more laterally in that sense and pull people in that way?
I think that's a good, and like inline skating and all that's important to help our skating ability too. All of that should be part of a coordinated pathway effort that gets set up, that where you can go from, I can start here as a junior, a youngster, and there is, I can just go through the levels, and there will be opportunities to keep going up if I'm good enough and interested enough. At the moment, I think that's very limited here.
I think that's where we've got a couple of facilities that have been opening up over the last few months too, like Viking Performance Academy there in Sydney. There is one in Melbourne. Yoko Merdigan runs it. I can't remember what it's called. Sorry, guys, if you're watching this. Newcastle's got a couple that have just opened too, where it's really tailoring to specifically to ice hockey players. So I think those facilities become really important to support, because they're not just a gym, they're actually bringing in equipment. Like Viking Performance Lab have just got one of the skating treadmills, so they hook you all up on the harnesses so you can actually skate on that treadmill itself. So things like that can become really important. Like if you can take your team in there once or twice a week, because you can book the off ice time, and then you're training on ice once a week, or like whatever access you have. I think that has the potential to enhance skills. So then when the kids are getting the ice time, they are playing better and doing better. Even the adults, like I know the Sydney Sirens spent quite a bit of time at Viking Performance Lab with their head coach being the owner is a big bonus for them. So, you know, maybe more of those facilities around the country that tailor specifically to hockey is a stepping stone, because the rinks are that really next level price point where these facilities might be that little bit more accessible.
And then, governance, we need improved governance procedures within Australia.
I was going to ask about that in a minute, can't lie.
Okay, no worries. And then, professionalism. I think, if the AIHL wants to make a next step up, it needs to seriously at some point go, we want to be a professional league, not an amateur league, with, other kind of in-kind payments around the place, and just, actually set things like, salary caps and stuff like this, make it sustainable, but, bring up all the level and make everything sort of above board everywhere, so everyone knows what's happening, and we can get a bit more competition across the board.
I do apologise. I was desperately looking for the name of the facility that Joachim Erdogan runs in Melbourne and couldn't find it in time, so we will sidestep that. But you talk about, we'll walk towards it, Sean, as you did mention it, of course. Been a bit of turmoil and upheaval in the upper reaches of Australian ice hockey. We've obviously painted a really fun picture of a great and growing developing sport, but it would be inauthentic to not talk about some of the issues that the sport is facing at the moment, because there's been controversy financially, I think is probably the best way to describe it. Some of the bits and pieces at the upper echelons of IHA. What is the general feeling on the ground about what's happened here, and maybe just kind of give the folk listening over here just a little bit of a breakdown of what exactly has been happening, because it's British fans will not be surprised, I think, by some of the controversy, but they may not be aware of some of the detail of what's happening on the ground there in Australia right now.
Well, you want me to do this one?
Yeah, you can go for this one.
To not get into legal trouble. Go.
Well, essentially, we had the previous administration on IHA who they resigned last year, and they resigned because there were irregularities in the books. They went and searched. There was a lot of money that no longer existed within the coffers at IHA, and they essentially had mismanaged Ice Hockey Australia for a number of years, and we're basically now the IHA is in a position of being essentially broke, owing a lot of money, and having to cut costs everywhere. I think we saw the AJs, the Australian Junior Ice Hockey League, just cease to exist. We saw national state championships not played last year. And then we saw the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League, receive cuts to their funding from IHA, and IHA are in charge of the ADUB, unlike the AIHL, which is sort of run independently. So it's they bore quite a bit of the brunt for that as well. So it's not been a rosy situation. There has been changes, maybe not all the changes that need to be made, but there definitely have been changes at AIHA, and we find ourselves in the situation where you look at our national teams. You know, Australia just had the national champion, the World Championships this year moved. Well, not moved. It could be cancelled, but it might be moved to Serbia or Georgia, out of the UAE, and you know, that's going to be a huge cost to any player that now wants to go compete in this. You know, having to basically raise all the funds. So they've been trying to raise funds like crazy. You know, getting people to donate and whatnot. But you look at, in comparison, the New Zealand Ice Hockey Federation that just made a post today about the fact that, yes, they had flights booked all through the Middle East, and they've now rearranged those. They're going to Sofia in Bulgaria, and they've basically paid for it all themselves. None of the players are financially out of pocket for that. So, you know, that's a big difference. And that comes down to the financial position of those two organizations, and shows that, you know, one's definitely been better managed than the other.
It's frustrating, isn't it, in that sense as well, when you see so much good stuff happening to then have that happen. And Courtney, with your view on the AW as well, that funding cut, I didn't see all of the posts, but I certainly remember the Adelaide Rush poking their heads above the parapet and sort of talking about it and looking to sort of fundraise. And sometimes it does feel like in some of our in less traditional hockey nations, let's call ourselves that, that sometimes success feels like it comes almost in spite of what's going on to try and organize it.
Absolutely. The direct impact, I think, was obviously all of the women had to pay substantially more this season in order to be able to play. And that's probably the biggest thing, is that all Aussies pay to play the game. We don't get to have the benefits of just showing up and playing. And that's where a lot of the pain was felt, and the teams, most of the teams would have held their own individual fundraisers. I did see a few different things pop up. There were jersey auctions. All those things contribute to supporting them for the season. So it definitely, of the girls I got to talk to throughout the year, definitely had a bit of a strain, but some of them were able to get individual player sponsors, which helps them as an individual to cover those fees. But overall, I think they did quite well to make a season out of a bit of a tricky beginning.
And then I always get very frustrated that then you get people online, you know, criticizing the national teams when they might not do so well at a national, you know, international competition, world championships. And they go, you know, oh, this just shows you how bad it is here in Australia and whatnot. And you go, well, it's not that. It's that often you've got what is essentially amateurs playing professionals when they get to those sort of levels. So it's hard for Australia to compete at those really high levels, and shows that sort of, I guess, difference in investment that you see.
Yeah. And you think, I mean, one of the things, of course, that does affect the AIHL at the beginning of every season is because of when the World Championships are. Yeah. The Australian national team, the Australian men's national team, the Mighty Roos, rock up just post preseason, which then leaves all of your national team players out of the league, which does make for a very, very interesting beginning. It should be said, because a lot of the top players aren't there, and it becomes a bit of a dice roll for at least a fortnight or so in the AIHL. But between the three of us, do we genuinely believe Australia's men are about to play in the World Championships? Because I have to confess, I think that the championships are going to get called off altogether.
Yeah, I posted the other day about this too. I cannot see a way that they're going to go, yeah, we can put on a tournament less than a month out in a new venue, and get everyone organized with flights, accommodation, and everything out to this. I mean, it's hardest for Australia, because if they're going to put it anywhere, it's going to be in Europe, which is near most of the teams. But still, I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. And this is after Australia had to bin off hosting the World Championships last year.
Yeah.
I think from a player safety point of view, it's for all of the teams across the world, it would make sense to, if they can't delay it, then to not have it this year. But it's I don't know, the fallout from what's going on is, the fuel costs, the flight costs, all of the costs go up. So it's already an expensive venture. Now it's like going up, to 1.5 double those costs. It almost doesn't feel worth it.
Yeah. And the fourth division will be in the same situation as well, because they were meant to be in Q8 and they also are waiting to hear whether it's been cancelled or moved. But then,
the fact Iran are in Division 4. And apparently there was a quote from the Iranian Sports Ministry that they would drive in their cars if they needed to compete in Q8. But price of petrol might put them off of that one. International hockey, though, let's talk about some nicer things, having talked a little bit about the grit and the grit and the grind. The Trans-Tasman Series was back. Always a lot of fun. IHA put a few quid into their coffers by charging $7 a stream, but ultimately, for the two of you, I assume the right side of the ditch came out on top in the series.
I was actually pretty excited about New Zealand winning that first one, because I feel like the last couple of years, Australia has just swept them. So I think it's really cool to see some improvement out of our neighbours across the water, and see them win that first one and put a bit of pressure on Australia. So
yeah, no, it is good. I must admit, watching New Zealand play well is always great. In these games, because Australia needs that competition and New Zealand needs that good level of competition, and it's both used for Worlds as well as scouting more players that increase the pool for the national teams, which is great. That's why you often get sort of players who would otherwise be on the fringes of the national team, not quite there, like Mitch Henning and stuff like this. But it was a lot of fun. They had packed arenas this time, and New Zealand seemed to like playing at the Ice House a lot more than they do playing in Auckland or any of their arenas when they play this series over in New Zealand. I don't know what it is. They seem to get thumped in New Zealand and then they come over here and they put up a much better showing. But it was good.
Yeah. I'm so old I remember the Trans-Tasman Champions League.
And that was supposed to return.
What, sorry?
A couple of years ago, they actually talked about bringing that back, and they were in advanced talks to do that, and then it was at the last minute they decided no. Instead, we're going to bring the Trans-Tasman back instead. So that's why we got the Trans-Tasman returned. But then, we didn't get a Champions League. But who knows if Worlds ends up getting cancelled? There could be opportunities at some point this year. They could go, you know what? Let's just have a Trans-Tasman Champions League between Australia and New Zealand again.
Let me throw out a hypothetical for you, because I'm interested to see what you think. We're talking about expanding bits and pieces. You've got the Warriors in the NRL. You've got Auckland and Wellington in the A-League. Sky City Stampede in the AIHL. Dominated New Zealand for years. If you picked them up and dropped them into the AI, how would they do?
They'd do so well.
Yeah.
They would do so well. I think it's been on the bucket wish list for most Australian hockey fans, as well probably New Zealand fans, to actually have a combined league, where there would be a New Zealand team or two New Zealand teams playing the Australian teams. I think that would be so good, especially considering, we've got Perth Thunder in the league. That's further for most teams on the East Coast in Australia than Town or Auckland or Canterbury or wherever you want to play them. Wellington.
I've looked up flights, and it is twice as long to get from Newcastle to Sydney to Perth than it is to get from Sydney to New Zealand. That's just mind-boggling.
I think it'd be amazing. It would be so good.
If ever you want to actually understand how big Australia is, tell people that. It's quicker to fly to New Zealand than to fly to Perth.
Yeah.
And also, if Australian teams went over to New Zealand, it would actually make a change than all the New Zealanders ending up in Australia at the moment. Chloe just in Ardern.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
We do get some great New Zealand players here. Like Carney on the Brave, like he's so good. And Ratcliffe,
Boltonov's a favourite of mine from Mustangs.
Yeah,
We love him. He was
we had a great chat
helping
with
out
him
in
last week.
Australia. He became one of our favourites.
Although he's definitely taken on the mantle of being a bit of an enforcer for the Mustangs. I even saw in the there's a great photo of him in from the Trans Tasman locked in arms with someone else, one of the Aussies. The refs running over.
Love it.
You can change the jersey, but you can't change the man. I do want to talk about one player in particular, but one Australian player who's not playing there. He's actually playing over here at the moment, though. I'm interested to see whether he does make his way back, and that's Jake Riley, who's been playing for the Solihull Barons in AIHL 1 in the AIHL 1 Northern League this year. Popped his head above the parapet a few times in the AIHL. Played in the PHL, yes, because that is a thing that existed, Australian ice hockey. Sorry, AIHL management, but the Pacific Hockey League was good, and it was also watchable that season, which is why I watched it. But 28 points in 23 games, playing as one of two imports in a sort of a 21-22 man roster. We've seen a few other guys come across sporadically. Weehee Darge came and played for Peterborough for a bit. Zander Wardlaw, of course, played for both Oxford and for Edinburgh. We've seen more Australians, kind of certainly the younger ones, of course, migrating across and doing bits in North America. Without expecting every Australian who comes across to turn into Nathan Walker, why are we not seeing more Australian players come and play in Europe?
That's a very good question. I think it can be a lot harder because a lot of the attributes people regard as Australians as being sort of big and tough, and good for that sort of North American style hockey, where skating ability and fine stick handling isn't as important. Whereas in a lot of European hockey leagues, kids are doing that from a very young age, and it's so important. Australian players would probably be behind the eight ball in a lot of that. I don't know necessarily about the UK. You guys sort of have your own hockey culture and your own hockey systems, but yeah, no, I definitely think that there could definitely be more players that could go over to the UK and play over in the UK system.
Just to throw in a perspective from me, Newcastle, I think, has one of the, I guess it's the community that I'm the most involved in. So I see the development of our juniors from under fives all the way up to AI, and we each year feels like we're getting more and more of our kids looking for spots overseas, and I do feel like probably cost is one of the biggest parts. It's how old are they, and can they be independent? Do they need a billet family? Are they over 18, so they're an adult and they can go and have this adventure on their own and connect with a team, and then they help them find people to, at least when they land, to get started. And it's those connections I think are what are important. And there's a few people sort of in our community, like Craig Tonks, who's done a lot of trips over there and built a lot of relationships. And I know of 3 or 4 of our kids and players that have ended up in Swedish teams in particular, that it's because he's built those relationships and then created a connection. And if the parents are like, I want to send my kid, he's like, yeah, talk to this person, talk to that.
Melbourne Ice did that a number of years ago too. They built that affiliate connection over in Sweden. Often, you'll get players who'll go over to Europe specifically if they're from sort of different backgrounds, you'll have Finnish players with Finnish heritage that will go over and play in Finland and whatnot, like Aleksi Toivonen, for instance.
Half of Canberra, for example, yes.
So there's quite a bit of that. But yeah, I also think the connections with imports also helps as well, open up avenues. When we've been having more British players now over, or players who are Canadian even, who've got a lot of experience playing in the UK, who have been coming over, so that opens up more opportunities then for people in the UK to hear about Australian players, and that can open up some avenues.
Yeah, indeed. Shout out Kim Tulberg, of course, who Courtney will be more than familiar with. Jake, of course, in playoff action with the Barons this weekend. Their quarterfinal series against the Hull Jets is Saturday and Sunday. They are Saturday in Solihull and Sunday at the world's most versatile arena, as the sign said outside. But if we're going to talk about, Sean mentioned Sweden, and if we don't mention him, he'll tell me off at some stage because he's played in Britain and he's played there. But Darcy Flanagan, of course, favourite of fans of BOTW. Australia, arguably the greatest character in the AIHL last year. We talked a lot about teams. Tell us about some of those. So obviously Darcy is a one of a kind, and I did joke in I believe in the chat in one of your shows last year that I thought Darcy will be finals MVP this year. So let's see what Adelaide can do. But tell people about some of the characters. Tell people about some of the names. If they start watching Australian ice hockey this year, what names are we gonna hear more and more of, both their scoring antics or their personality, shall we say? Because there's a few that I'm thinking about right now that are definitely more scorers, and there's a few that are definitely more personality. Hi, Jamie Burke.
Excellent question. Without all of the team's rosters announced, it's hard to. You kind of hit the nail on the head with Darcy. He's such a different person off the ice than he is on the ice, and I think long time friend of all three of us, Andrew McDougall, did an excellent article on him not too long ago, and it's like Darcy knows it. He knows that when you don't know him in person, that people are going to hate him because of his playing style, and that was totally me. And I've said it to his face more than once. I've said to him, "I'd love to hate you, mate," and then as I've had the chance to talk to him a few times and get to know him, he's just a larrikin. He's so funny and such a sweet guy, but so different when he plays. I still hate him when he plays.
Yeah, it's fever.
We're against him. When North Stars are against him, don't like it. But he
also fills a role in that Adelaide team quite well, and a role that no one else in that Adelaide team is willing to do. Most teams will have at least one player who will be that more enforcer than anyone else, because there is a role for that within hockey, and he plays it to a T.
He does. So there's a few names sort of in Bears and Ice Dogs that we'll see come back, and people like Daniel Pataki. I just love seeing when he shines. He's just an excellent leader, and so I'm really keen to see him back out on the ice again. I think Batu in Brisbane is a favourite.
Again, his cousin Bear has been tearing up trees here for Sheffield Steel Dogs. Cup-winning goal in overtime as well. So I did joke to Jamie McElroy, the general manager of the Steel Dogs. It's like, right, let him go across to Australia. Let's have both of them and see what happens.
Yeah, I was talking to someone connected with the Lightning and going, have you thought about trying to bring him over? Right. Use those connections. Then again, I used to always do this with Stephen Blunden too, when he used to be with the Brave. His brother Mike at the time was playing in the NHL. I'm like, just ask him to come over. He'll be fine. Like he was only a fourth line in the NHL. You can come over and play the AI. But there's quite a number of characters. I mean, Brian Funes is a massive character within the league. Whether it be in the North Stars last year or Bears previously, like just an absolute character. I know that he also loves to have a lot of fun off the ice. Like whenever he comes to Canberra, there's always a running thing with the MC about dad jokes and stuff like this. They absolutely love it.
Yeah, look, Newcastle loved him last year, and I can't wait to see where he pops up this year. He's just someone that hasn't been announced yet, but he was very loved in Newcastle last year.
Yeah. He really was. Everywhere he goes, he's loved, and then everyone else loves to hate him. I get another one of those kind of players. Yeah. I would always say like someone like Robert Hasselhurst as well over in Perth. He's a bit of a character. I don't know anyone else quite like him. He's a real sort of country farm boy who's just an absolute menace on the blue line for Perth, and he always seems like he's having the best of time out there. Far as scorers, again, sticking with Perth, Hikosaka is going to be massive again. Yeah. He actually stayed in Australia over the break. He's actually studying here now, so we could get Hikasako here for quite a while, which would be very exciting for Perth Thunder fans. But yeah, the addition of actually having the Asian imports has been massively positive for the league. I don't think we would have got players like Gendanov, Hikasako. I'm trying to think of some others.
Tatsushida is probably the star of ABC now available.
Yes. These guys probably would not have played in the AI if it wasn't for this rule being introduced. So that's been one positive change that we've had the last couple of years. And
just for folk who don't understand, who aren't familiar, Sean, can you just explain the rule? Because essentially, your import limit. You have your import limit of players from sort of the Northern Hemisphere, but you're allowed kind of like, what is it, one extra?
So essentially, a few years ago they brought in. Well, they've always had import limits, but a few years ago they brought a player points limit per season for teams, and essentially allows you to have 4 North American or European imports. On that can actually dress. You can have up to 6, but 4 that can dress, and then 1 Asian import or another. You can have a second one, and they all count. They all cost points for your team, but it's interesting. But previously they didn't have that. They just had basically you could have 4 and then a 5th one as a sub that could come in and out. But
it's not caused any controversy at all.
No, not at all. It's not a constant talking point within the hockey community here at all.
It didn't end up in court at all. Terrifying moment that was for everybody. Where that popped up on my phone. Where it popped up on my phone when I was in the office and just went, "Oh no!" I think
and there always seems to be arguments. There always seems to be arguments and people lodging complaints, and then, oh man, every season.
We're edging towards the end of our time together. So what I won't do, I won't ask for the big predictions, because of course you guys over at Oz Hockey Media are going to, of course, do your preview bits and pieces before too long, and I don't want you guys to give away the farm with the milk in that kind of sense. But let me give you a couple of things to kind of to talk to us about. So we'll start. Courtney, we'll start with you, because ladies first and chivalry is not dead; it's just hiding in the cupboard. Which team will overperform? Which team will underperform? And given who you think the minor premiers will be, will they win the cup?
Look, overperformance. I might cop a bit for this, but I think Melbourne Ice will come in with a air of confidence, being the defending champs, but I'm not sure what that will look like without Booth, because he was such a big part of their season. So I don't know. It's hard to know. Maybe I should be saying them for the underperform, because it's hard to call. But I think Melbourne Ice is definitely in this group. I think Adrenaline are just constantly getting shaken up and disrupted and ripped apart and put back together, and just, I don't know. Adelaide just feels so unsettled that I think it's gonna be a fight. And as much as the Bears and Dogs couldn't even play last season, I feel like Adelaide and Rhinos are 2 opposite ends of rebuilding teams, and I want to say rebuilding to give a positive tone to what they're going through. I think Melbourne Ice top, Adelaide the bottom. So it's the premiers, and that's a hard question. I haven't even seen any of them play yet.
Of course, the premiers did win last year, which is unusual. It doesn't often happen in the AI.
No. It is such a rarity in that sense, but this is what happens when you add a 500 game NHL to your roster mid-season. So we wait to see whether that happens again once David Booth is past his injury, and past some of the controversy he stirred up here. Sean, thoughts?
Yeah, so
If you
I
can't
think
just cut me, at least give me your under and over. At least give me who you think will under and overperform.
so. I think
I've got some thoughts.
overperform. I think the Ice Dogs are going to overperform. I don't think a lot of people are giving them much chance this year, but I think they're going to play better than what people think, and I think they're going to reach finals. Now, of course, I'm saying this before I've seen all the rosters, but yeah, I just have this feeling that they're going to do really well this year, much better than they have previously. And yeah, I think Jason's a great coach, so he'll be able to put them together. And then as far as underachieve, everyone will hate me, but I don't know. I just kind of got a feeling that perhaps Canberra might underachieve a bit this year, and not, there's so much expectation on Canberra every season to be the best team and to win the cup. And it's a lot of pressure for a team that, is changing, has changed last year, although they've now got Casey Kabara back this year in a really weird bout turn things. But yeah, I know and having this big arena and everything, I just have this feeling that they might not do as well as what people are thinking.
Yeah. I also have the Ice Dogs in the team. I think that will sort of overperform, particularly as well if both Kuleshov are back, particularly Dimitri.
Yeah, and they've potentially got Cal Costa for the entire season as well, which is massive.
Yeah, and I think there's enough little pieces in me to make that I too think that I don't know whether they might leave it late and squeak in at the end, but I have in my head I have the Ice Dogs making it to the final.
And I think Adelaide tried to do that last year, but just missed out. I remember all the controversy the year before. I think it was when they had they brought in the Ukrainian and finally got his visa was accepted, and then everyone's just like, yeah, but he can't play finals. And then anyway, there was some exemption. Anyway, the whole backstory to that. But yeah, and they almost did it. Like it came down to like the last few weekends.
Yeah. Who do I think my overperformance? I think after I'm interested. I can't say the Mustangs because they didn't perform last year really, and therefore pretty much the only way is up unless they completely screw the pooch this year. Who do I think will underperform? Because I haven't seen much of their roster. I am a little bit worried about Newcastle, Courtney. I can't lie, but I do think certainly in the regular season. I am even with Hikosaka. I am a little bit worried again about Perth, and I don't know why. But there's something there that I can't from the names I've seen come out so far. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about the Thunder that just leaves me a little bit uneasy in terms of them being quite as in that conversation for minor premiers as they have been in the past. Because insert your own jokes here, and don't worry, Thunder fans. All the Inferno fans will be standing there staring in the background if you don't win the Goodall Cup this year.
No pressure.
Like, sorry, lads, what's the matter? I can't hear you.
I think for the Thunder this year, it's going to be so important about what imports they bring in. Like I just find with the Thunder too many times they bring in imports that don't really suit the style of the team.
Yeah.
And that ends up undoing them. And I must admit, last year I know that they brought imports
pieces, isn't it? Sometimes
I know they brought imports which came from the UK and whatnot, but they were good imports. But I don't think they really gelled as well with the team as what they could have done. And that there's always a risk of that when you bring in new imports. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah. And we won't see who those imports are till they're often in country. Like I know Newcastle won't announce any of our names until they're physically here and at training, and then it'll be like, okay, you can tell people they're here now. So it might take a few weeks before we actually see any of that growth and change, like in the teams. You always get sort of that bumpy start, then they all start to get here.
And I also think that quite a few teams might have actually had their original import plans thrown into chaos again with what's happened in the Middle East, because there would have been a lot of teams looking at European imports this year that might have gone, oh, now the cost of bringing over a player from Europe has skyrocketed. Now let's pivot to North America, to the US or Canada, and bring over someone much more simply that will cost less money to bring over. Yeah.
Although you're not having to bring over doing like a 5-leg flight that goes
Yeah.
to like New York and Atlanta and LA just to get you to Sydney or Melbourne before you can even get to the rest of where you're going. The AIHL season starts Friday, the 17th of April with the Sydney
Yeah, thank
Derby.
God it's longer. Thank God it's
What,
not
sorry?
like the start of April, like
Yeah.
last year.
We've got a few weeks to get ourselves ready.
But it certainly is going to be an interesting one because that is the final weekend of the British men's domestic season and the start of the Australian men's domestic season. So the big important bit as we finish off our time together today, guys, where can they find what you guys are putting out? Get the plugs out there so that for all of us poor folk, even if we have to be up at 5-6 o'clock in the morning to watch Central Coast on a Sunday, spoiler alert, I'll catch up on AIHL.tv. Where can we find everything we need to know about Oz Hockey Media and how to find you guys in Hockey Night in Australia?
What you want to take?
Yeah, look, we are on Facebook and Instagram mainly, so just you can search up Oz Hockey Media and on both of those platforms, give us a like and a follow. We will be posting lots into stories onto our timeline to let you know where to watch, what games are happening, what the scores are at, and if the timing doesn't always work, we're going to give you the score wrap. We're going to let you know what's happened. We're going to show you the ladder, and all of it will be across Facebook and Instagram. So feel free to jump in, comment, let us know where you're from in the UK, and Hockey Night in Australia will be returning. We haven't locked in a day of the week yet, but it will be one of the 5 days from Monday to Friday.
It should definitely be weekly.
We will pick one of the weekdays that works, and we'll promote that. And look, we're super, super grateful to you, Anthony. You've been such a big supporter of our content and our podcast, and it has been a great pleasure to join you and say hello to the UK fans. So appreciate you having us on.
No problem at all. A big thank you to both of you. When eventually you pick a day of the week, I mean, Douglas Adams wants it. Time is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so. But it's well past your dinner time and edging towards your bedtime. So we will go there. As I said, Oz Hockey Media, check these guys out to keep you entertained throughout our off season, through their season, and pick up some names. Admittedly, it was the PHL. Owen Sobchuk played over there before coming over to Britain. Rob Lakovic has been over there. Kim Talberg has been over there. There is always some gems to be had, some great hockey being played by the folk down under. And also do check out the NZIHL as well. Those guys stream their games on YouTube. Plenty of fun to be had. Kieran Long's played over there. Liam Stewart's played over there. Even Ali Band has played over there. In fact, Ali Band has played in both and has 3 passports. Bless his cotton socks. But either way, a massive thank you.
Pitt was amazing.
What, sorry?
I remember when Scotty Pitt came over to Canberra and played for Canberra from Braehead Clan, now Glasgow Clan. It was amazing.
Far too many names we could sit and talk about for hours. Courtney Kinniston, Sean O'Connor from Oz Hockey Media, thank you very much for taking the time to chat to me. Have a really great season with everything you do.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
Cheers.